It was just another summer morning in Hiroshima. August 6, 1945. The sun was already blazing over the rooftops, casting a golden light on a city that had no idea it was living its final peaceful moment. Tsutomu Yamaguchi stepped off the tram near the Mitsubishi shipyard, holding his briefcase in one hand and rubbing his eyes with the other. He hadn't slept well, how could he? The war was in its final stages, and tension hung in the air like thick fog. He had been in Hiroshima for 3 months on a work assignment. Today was supposed to be his last day. He was just a 29-year-old engineer, a father, a husband, a man with a home waiting for him in Nagasaki. He was going to board that train in just a few hours and return to his family. He had a train ticket in his pocket, but fate had a different plan. At exactly 8:15 a.m. the sky exploded, then saw a blinding white light. It was so intense, he thought the sun had fallen from the sky. Yamaguchi didn't see the plane. He only heard a strange, mechanical hum. Time melted and nothing. He was lifted into the air and hurled like a ragdoll across the ground. His eardrums ruptured. His vision turned to static, too silent. When he came to, everything was silent, hanging like strips of wet paper. He looked down at his arms. The skin was gone. He tried to stand, but the ground burned his feet. Every breath tasted like metal and ash. Buildings, homes, people, erased in a blink. The city around him, gone. And somewhere in the distance, a massive black cloud twisted into the heavens, a mushroom, towering like a god. He passed children, screaming for their mothers, people with no faces, skin hanging off bodies like rags. For hours, they sat there in silence, not speaking, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how to describe what they'd seen. He staggered through what used to be streets, now twisted steel and fire, and the smell, he would never forget that smell. Burned flesh, boiled blood, charred hair. Hiroshima was no longer a city. It was a graveyard with a heartbeat. They sought shelter in what was left of an air raid trench. Yamaguchi was one of the lucky ones, if you could call it that. He found his co-workers, also burned and bleeding. And together, when the fires finally died down, Tsutomu made a decision. He would go home, to Nagasaki. Tsutomu Yamaguchi could barely walk. His feet were scorched, his arms were wrapped in burned cloth, his face swollen, raw and peeling. But he was alive, and he had one mission: get home. It was the next morning, barely 24 hours after the bombing. He limped to the train station. Yes, the trains were still running. Incredibly, a few lines had survived the blast radius. The station was chaos. Survivors, military, doctors, corpses, wrapped in sheets. No one spoke. Not because they didn't want to, but because the human brain can't form words for what it just saw. People boarded with missing limbs, burned skin, hollow eyes. They sat beside each other. No talking, just a train full of ghosts on steel wheels. Tsutomu boarded. He held his briefcase close, though it was soaked in blood and ash. Inside were a few scraps of paper and a photograph of his family. He looked out the window as the city disappeared behind him. He didn't cry. He couldn't. The tears would come later. Nagasaki. His wife, Hisako, screamed when she saw him. His young son hid behind her legs. The green hills, the narrow streets, the ocean, air, home. Yamaguchi arrived at the city gates, looking like a man who had clawed his way out of hell. He collapsed into her arms. They brought him inside, wrapped his body, gave him food. He was burned, deaf in one ear, half-blind in one eye, but he was alive. He told his wife everything. The flash, the fire, the dead silence. She held his hand, shaking. "Thank God you're safe now." The next morning Tsutomu went to work. Yes, he actually went to work. He arrived at the Mitsubishi office, bandaged and limping. His boss looked at him like a ghost. And when Tsutomu told him a single bomb destroyed all of Hiroshima, his boss, like many others in Japan, didn't believe it. He told them the US had developed a bomb that could destroy an entire city in a second. They laughed. They said, "One bomb can't do that." At exactly 11:02 a.m. on August 9, 1945, the windows flashed white. The sky shattered again. The second atomic bomb hit Nagasaki. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was there again. He dove to the ground. The office collapsed. Glass flew through the air like knives. Fires erupted instantly. The deafening roar of the bomb thundered in his skull. He thought he was dying. Again. But somehow, once again, he survived. This time, he was inside a steel-framed building that saved him. The rest of Nagasaki wasn't so lucky. The bomb killed 70,000 people in seconds. Beat. Tsutomu staggered home, fearing the worst. His home was crushed. The windows shattered. Fires raged. He screamed for his wife and child. And then, out of the smoke, she appeared, Hisako, holding their son. They had left early that morning to find burn ointment for him. That decision saved their lives. Tsutomu fell to his knees. He wept. His body was destroyed. His ears still rang. His skin was raw. But his family was still coming. Was alive. He had survived 2 atomic bombs in 3 days. But the worst. Years passed. Japan changed. The streets were rebuilt. New buildings rose over scorched earth, and the silence of war was replaced with the sound of children playing and factories humming. But Tsutomu Yamaguchi remained haunted. He never forgot the flash, never forgot the silence that followed. And he knew if he stayed silent, forever so would the truth. In 1957, more than a decade after the bombs, he was invited to share his experience with the Japanese government. They were compiling records of Hibakusha, atomic bomb survivors, but even in that room, when he told them he had survived both bombs, the official looked up from the paper and blinked in disbelief. Oh, the room fell silent. Yamaguchi showed them the scars. His work, records, travel logs, eyewitness names, everything matched. He had been in Hiroshima on August 6th, and in Nagasaki on August 9th. In 1966, 21 years after the bombs, the Japanese government finally recognized him as a double survivor. Only one officially recognized. Out of the 260,000 killed or injured, he became a living contradiction, a man marked by death, who chose to become a symbol of peace. But recognition came with pain. Strangers called him cursed. Some avoided him. Others pitied him. A few even said he was lying, that no one could survive 2 nuclear bombs. But he knew the truth. His wife knew the truth. And every time he looked at his son, he saw the reason he had survived. Still, the weight pressed heavier with age. Every time he heard of a new war, a missile test, a country threatening nuclear weapons, his hands would tremble, because he knew what those weapons really did. Not just 2 buildings, not just 2 soldiers, but 2 flesh, 2 children, 2 mothers, holding babies, to cities that once dreamed. In the 2000s, now in his 80s, Tsutomu finally began speaking to the world. He gave speeches, shared his diaries, stood before politicians and begged them to understand. "I'm not angry," he once said, standing before a classroom in Tokyo. "I'm not bitter, but I want you to know what it felt like when the sky exploded." He spoke in New York at the UN, told his story to BBC, two American newspapers. He was called the unluckiest man in history. But Tsutomu disagreed. He called himself a messenger. He wasn't interested in blame, or politics, or revenge. He only wanted one thing: for no one, ever, to experience what he had. A city gone in a second. Children burning in the streets. The smell of your own skin turning to smoke.